This is take 4 because I realized I wanted to be able to make the video nice and short. Let's get into it. Persecution. Hot topic. All right. So, what does it mean to be persecuted? I am not going to give you a very scholarly definition of it, but let's just put it this way. If you feel like the world actively hates you and actively wants you to be erased, and chances are you might be one of those people that are, persecuted. There's different levels of persecution. There's the very serious level where the possibility of genocide is there and it happens. There's another level where it's like tight governmental control and military force being used against you to kind of regulate your behavior. That's another level. There's another one where it's like you choose to follow one belief system, but you got somebody else saying you're not allowed to follow that belief system because it goes against their belief system, and their belief system is the only right way. That's another one. But there's one that the Lord wants me to talk about, and it's based on gender identity and sexual preferences. Now, the Lord knows that people don't know what love is, because if they knew what love is, He would be loved so deeply by a person that knows what love is. People who don't know how to love are conditional. You can't be my friend if you associate with so and so. If you can't be my friend if you voted for so and so. You can't be my friend if, and then the list goes on. You can't be my friend if you hurt my feelings. You can't be my friend if you say something that goes against what I believe in. That's conditional. That's not love. But there is something to say about integrity. Because I think back on Proverbs, and I think about the company people keep. Now, people who are beloved by the world belong to it. Yes, bad things happen to everybody to some degree. There are differences in severity. Nothing's black and white. People who strive to be of this world, chasing after glamour, chasing after money, that they want to have all the hoes, they want to roll with the bros, that they want to have, all the ice or whatever, the cheddar, would, all these dumb things, that they want all the dumb things that are promoted in this world, like the Gucci bag and the Ferrari, or whatever. And it's like they want to be famous, they want to be rich, they want to travel, they want to own an island. It's the dumb stuff. People that strive for that, they are of this world. Take a look at what they're about. Take a look at what they talk about. Look at what they do. Look at how they treat people. And think about how they look at themselves. You got to look at all these different layers, different facets of a person. You got to dig deep beneath the surface. People that are truly hated by the world are not supposed to belong to the world. They've been chosen out of it, but they can't automatically just sit back and think that they're all good to go and that all they have to do is just coast and wait for the rapture. It's like you can't just coast and wait for the rapture. You have to prepare yourself for it. If you've been invited to the wedding feast, are you going to show up in ugly, tattered clothing? Or are you going to work on yourself, clean yourself up, and get dressed in pure white clothing to kind of just show that you are about that purity, that truth, that light? It's like, if you want to become a bride of Christ, you got to do the work. But if you find yourself hated by the world, consider that an invitation. Consider that a chance. God loves unconditionally, but he knows that only good people can be saved. Because he doesn't want to corrupt and ruin a beautiful paradise. He's such a wise and divine being. He knows that the actions of one of his sons has ruined something that should have been beautiful. And if he just brought anybody into paradise, it would corrupt it all over again. Because darkness is like a virus. It's sticky, it's heavy, it's hard to clear out, it makes people sick. People get cancer, people, have illnesses. People have illnesses up here, people have illnesses that impact their body. The mind and the body are so closely connected. There's a reason why it was taught mind over matter, but people don't understand the full scope of what it means because they start thinking, this is physical. This is not physical. You've been told that. You've been told that you're physical. You've been told that, you see an object outside yourself. But it's not true. And people, that work in government, that work in different high-paying institutions, and who want to hang on to their profits and the control of the kingdom here. I ate a salad earlier this morning, and it's coming back to bite me. So, people that want to control the world here, they're not living in accordance to the teachings of the Lord. And it's because they know that knowledge is power. And if they want people to live in their kingdom, they have to be an authority figure over everyone else. And to do that, you make laws, you make rules, you make systems of education, you release certain scientific information that promote your agenda. You force people to get vaccinated, you force people to do different things just to make it seem like they're good model citizens and they're being responsible to society, and you control everything. It's like the Truman Show. You basically control the people, the little people, and make them think that the world that they live in is truly as they believe it to be. Now, everything's falling apart, and people have a chance to make a decision. Do they want to basically go with the flow of, this agenda and, take up their pitchforks and start lynching people? Or do people want to step back and say that none of this is right? I want to save my soul. There's two different things that people can do. Be part of this world, or to not be part of this world. You can't straddle the line. You can't say, well, I like this and this, but I want to do this because it's more fun. You can't do that. Because any little bit of it makes you not good. Say you want to grow closer to God, but you lie to people and you manipulate their emotions. That's not what a good person does. That's not what a loving person does. You can't say that you're a godly person if you do that kind of thing. And there's people facing persecution by people who claim to be godly. And it's because of their sexual preferences and gender identity. It's like, okay, you're going to claim that you follow the teachings of God, but you're going to be a hypocrite and promote hate and, impose your viewpoints on somebody else. And that's not the way of God. And people are going to be very upset because it's taken me a lot of work to get to this point. And I'll tell you, first and foremost, I did change my name. My name was not always Tobias John. I was Lauren Thompson. I had a different name, and I had gender dysphoria because I felt like this body was not a good representation of how I felt about myself inside myself. But I had to learn why that was going on. And it took a lot of work. And as my friend told me, she said to me that I'm basically a prodigy when it comes to spiritual teachings. I've understood things very well, and I've applied wisdom to my life. It takes a lot of work. If you look at the state of my ceiling, it's not glamorous. I am poor. Like, I don't have the money to fix it. I know I told my mom that I would help to fix it, but I don't have the money. I am unemployed. I have not been able to keep a job. The longest job I kept was for 3 years working at an early childhood learning center. But, I struggled getting to know myself. I had to wonder why I felt so strongly identified with the male energy. I had to figure out why it wasn't always that way, why I felt more connected to the female energy. And then I had to learn it was because of all my previous life experiences beyond just this life. I have many different past lives. I lived as a male, I lived as a female. My very first experience on this earth, I came in as a male. And it was a very positive experience because back then, earth was very beautiful. Water was clean. Nothing was poisoned. Nothing was poisoned. Nothing was genetically modified so that it would, hurt your body in some way, shape, or form. It was pure. There was no big pharma. There were no kingdoms. There was no dictator. There was nobody telling me that I had to, conform to one thing or to another or be killed. There was none of that. It was just a very pure and beautiful place. Beautiful trees, beautiful Florida. The animals were abundant, but not out of control. Human beings were not so very populous. There was not as much people because they were not yet out of control. And then things started going wrong because people over time began to feel like they were entitled to having power and control and to be able to determine what people are allowed to do and not to do, and for their own glory, not for Heavenly Father. And it's different when somebody is actually doing the hard work to investigate everything within themselves, to discover why they feel so connected with one gender or the other, and that why they feel so fluid. I am an empath. I am very highly sympathetic. The days of the week have their energy shifts. Some days are more masculine, some days are more feminine. I shift with those energies. People can be a certain mood. I shift with that mood. It's hard, and I haven't been able to hold a job for very long because I shift all the time in my own consciousness because I am very energetically sensitive. And being that I'm that energetically sensitive, I tend to know people rather quickly. And I know that this world thrives off of disharmony, discord, and confusion. If you can confuse people about who they really are, you can control them. You could scare them. You could bully them. You could ostracize them. And just think about all the persecution that people face just for not fitting a stereotype. God is looking for people that don't want to be evil, wicked, or corrupt. Whatever word that people choose to use to describe those that promote hate, promote human trafficking, sex slaves. There's a lot of things that are wrong with this world. Lying being one of them. Sensationalism, bigotry, hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is a big one when it comes to religion, especially like Christianity, because their leaders teach a very, very shallow and distorted version of the Lord's teachings, and what's written in the book is not meant to be interpreted literally. It's not. And it's because knowledge is powerful. They don't want everybody to just have this knowledge. Because people do the wrong things once they get their hands on something powerful. It's not that power corrupts people, because there are people that grow into a high position through virtuous means, through righteousness, and through following God's way. But these people live humbly because they follow God's way. They are charitable. They are not about themselves. They're about helping others. They're not about hoarding wealth. They're not about, becoming an influencer or celebrity. And when it comes to homosexuality, there is a sin that's connected to that, but it's not in the way that gets taught. So here's from my own personal experience. I was an Assyrian prince, and I moved to Jerusalem in around 645 BCE. Now, before that move, I did have a boyfriend, and he was a commander in the military. So he and I were together, and at the time I was still proving myself as a soldier. So I had to prove myself in order to get the promotion, because that's how my dad wanted things to be done. Like, I didn't get to be a general straight away. I had to prove myself. But what my dad didn't like was that I had a relationship with another man. He didn't believe that two men should be having sexual relations with one another because it was a distraction. He was an odd person. Like, there was parts of him that were, about being able to be more upright, have integrity, but there was parts of him that didn't. So he was kind of a mishmash of things because he was basically groomed to be a certain way. He didn't know any better. So I moved to Jerusalem, 645 BCE, and it was not during a time of a war campaign. I had some time before I had to go into service again. And as I was adjusting to life there, I encountered somebody who was another man, but he was kinder than the guy that I was with initially. And I had to learn by looking back on my life experiences way long ago that I was with the first guy because I felt like I needed to be protected from the world. It was not out of love. It was not out of a heart-to-heart connection. It was because I was scared all to heck that somebody was going to victimize me. All right. Now, this other guy, at first I thought he was creepy. He was weird. But he turned out to be pretty decent individual. There were some things that had to be worked out within him, but he was respectful. He was somebody that was kind of an oddball because he wasn't in the tight inner circle of his organization, but kind of at the outskirts of it. He was one of these people that, didn't follow his religion to the T. He kind of he fudged things here and there. So he, basically found me when I was at my low point. And we get to talking, and I remember sitting by his side, and I remember just having an honest heart-to-heart with him, saying, I don't like who I am. I don't like, where I'm at. I don't like that I feel like I have no control over where my life is supposed to go. And I told him how suffocating it was to feel like there's all this pressure on me to basically step up and to be a man. And I told him that I felt like I was a failure at being a man because I just felt so emotional about things. I didn't start feeling emotional until I left Nineveh. I basically went completely numb when I was in Nineveh because I had to be. And it was a survival, you know, tactic. It was a coping mechanism. I had to survive or be eaten. So I talked to this man. His name was Ishmael. And Ishmael was older than me. He was kind of like a father figure at moments, but I get to talking to him and I get to saying that I don't understand why I feel the way I feel, and I wanted to know better about why I feel the way that I do. And the reason why our friendship was long lasting was because it was honest. It was heartfelt. I was not there to use him. I was not there to have him as my protection or whatever. It was a genuine friendship. You get to know people, you get to love people as you get to know who they are deep inside. It's not for superficial things. Love is not about using people, it's about connection. And he happened to be somebody that was true to me, so our friendship was long lasting. It had longevity, but in this world you don't have that. And so we were two men who felt that we could just be very honest with one another and just say, you know what, this world's very limiting at times because we live in a world where people of authority want to basically put themselves up on a pulpit or a pedestal, and they want to dictate how other people are going to live their lives. They impose their authority on others, not letting them grow closer to God. So I grew closer to Ishmael, and I basically learned something about homosexuality. It was never about having sex. It was never about, using somebody for your own gains or because they make you feel a certain way. It's just a heart to heart connection. It's just a friendship. It was supposed to be a pure friendship. And it's not pure here. Like, people get to thinking that it's about having sex. It's about, getting high. It's about all these different things that glorify the senses of the body. And it's like, you're not supposed to worship the body. You're defiling your spirit when you chase after things of this world, the hedonism of this world. It's like you're defiling your spirit. It's like you're not honoring the divine by being loose and having many partners. You're dishonoring the light you were given because now you're just handing it out to anybody just because you feel a certain way to them. And that's what's wrong. The world teaches people to be so surface level. Say, pretend I'm extra good looking, pretend that I'm perfect, my skin's flawless, I don't have these catfish hairs going on here on my lips. Just pretend I'm super hot, super good looking. And if you start lusting over my appearance, that's part of what's wrong in this world. And that's what's promoted. When somebody decides to keep their genitals and then add fake boobs in addition, it's not because they want to be themselves. It's because they want to experience something of this world because it's fun to them, because they think it's exciting, because they think it's thrilling, because it lets them play both sides, and they could dance around with immorality. I didn't alter myself. I didn't chop my bobs off. I didn't, get a fake schwang. It's like, because I learned what this world promotes is wrong. Look, Asher Ubalit II was not the kind of person that people were taught to think of. Okay, he was a very sensitive person. He had difficulties being the man that society thought he should have been, but he was a sweet person deep inside, just emotionally hurt. That was me. I had that experience. People would have negative opinions about who I was in that life because what they have is not a true representation of myself. I look back at that life, I remember big portions of it, but not all of it. There's still more that I'm learning about myself from back then, and I learned that I was a very sensitive person. I seemed like I was on the autistic side of things. I seemed like I had ADHD at moments, but that's because that's how my energy is. Like I'm built this way. I don't want to say I'm programmed to be this way, but in a way I'm designed to be this way. I'm a visionary. And God wants me to be able to have a connection with him so that I could help connect people to him. But people have to get in connection with him by recognizing that what they do may not be for their highest good. Homosexuality, as it's promoted in this world, is not of the highest good. If you get a relationship with, if you're a female and you find a good friend that's female, it's supposed to be pure. It's not supposed to be about everything that's promoted in this world. It's supposed to be about developing the soul and healing the hurt of the soul. It's about getting past the trauma, getting through the blocks and barriers. It's about being able to grow into a greater person. Because I think about this connection I have with my friend Alora. I became a better person because I became more like her, in some of her attributes, being able to be loving, to be, non-judgmental, to be, somebody that's kind and giving. And that was because those qualities were within me and I had to bring that out. You can't bring out what's not there. But you could eventually cultivate a greater light within yourself if you follow the path that leads you to God. And everybody's paths are different. But people rather follow the wrong one because they want to chase after whatever the heck is promoted here. It's not great. It doesn't go with you. The soul, once it leaves the body, where are you going to end up? Think about it. Do you want to end up in a good place or do you not care? And that's a choice you're going to have to make. I was friends with Ishmael in another life because he was the only person that was willing to see me for who I am deep inside. He was not one of those people that looked at me and was like, ew, gross. Or, thought I was just some kind of playboy. Like, people had all sorts of weird opinions on me. And I'm like, I can understand why. Because the life I grew up in was not very positive to start. But I did try to make improvements. I made mistakes. And I learned from them. So I'm speaking as somebody that made a lot of mistakes in that time. I'm not speaking to make people feel bad about themselves. I'm not speaking to make people think that they can't be who they really are inside. Be who you are, accept who you are, but recognize that you may have to make changes in order to really, truly grow as a soul. And you have to know what direction you're growing in. Is it for good? Or is it for evil? There are people that rather grow towards evil. And they do. Because they like the wealth, they like luxury, they like cars, they like the fancy clothes, they like traveling and take advantage of, people and places and, make themselves look like they're, all that. It's like, that's vanity. So just make a decision, be responsible. Like, recognize that you have agency, but you can only have more agency if you have awareness. And that's the big thing. Without awareness, you have no agency. You can't make a choice for yourself because you're just letting the world dictate how you feel about things. So, two people of the same sex can have a pure and wholesome friendship. Somebody who is female but identifies as a male can live life virtuously by understanding that there's a reason why they're in a female body, but they can carry more essence of the male and use it to uplift the female. It's all about balance. And it's only hard because people resist change. People resist what they have to do to become better. And that's when it gets hard because they try to hang on to things that are not good for them. So it's always up to you what you choose to do. And just know that God does love you. He's so warm, loving, and compassionate. But he just wants people to know that a lot of what's being promoted here is connected to evil. And that's not his way.